Tonight on Reporting Scotland, Alex Salmond returns to his homeland for the last time. Draped in the saltire, the former First Minister's coffin was flown home after his sudden death in North Macedonia. Also in tonight's programme, a teenager admits killing an Elgin bus driver in a violent assault. A court heard that Keith Rollinson's attacker headbutted and rained punches on him. Breaking news in the last hour, Inverness Caledonian Thistle Football Club confirms it is going into administration.
Not everybody can rely on aunties and uncles and grandparents, and parents are already struggling.
Parents in Perth and Kinross prepare for a 2-week school strike.
And coming up in tonight's sport, a huge weekend of football lies ahead. It's the clash of the Premiership's top two as Celtic host Aberdeen.
Hello, I'm Sally Magnuson. Welcome to Friday's programme. It's 6 days since the former First Minister, Alex Salmond, died from a heart attack while he was at a conference in North Macedonia. This morning, his coffin, draped in the saltire, was borne home in a private flight. It arrived on Scottish soil at around 2 o'clock this afternoon. Friends and family, including his sisters and his Alapa colleague Kenny McCaskill, stood guard in Aberdeen to welcome him back. Our political correspondent Andrew Kerr reports.
The final journey home. It began in Ohrid, where the Macedonian authorities ensured a respectful send-off for the former First Minister of Scotland. The private charter flight was paid for by the businessman Sir Tom Hunter. It took off for the journey over the continent. Alex Salmond had been in Ohrid speaking at a conference when he died suddenly of a heart attack last Saturday. Alex Salmond made the North East his political home after first winning a seat here in the late 1980s. He spent a total of 25 years as a Member of Parliament, flying up and down to London from Aberdeen Airport. It's here that he will touch down for the final time in his homeland. Around 3.5 hours later, the flight approached into view after tracing the shape of a heart over the northeast. The aircraft was met by Mr Salmond's family and his friend of more than 60 years, the former Justice Secretary Kenny McCaskill. The coffin was disembarked and placed in the hearse. Alex Salmond was a controversial and colourful character in life. Today, his Alapa Party colleagues paid tribute.
Well, this is a sad day for Scotland. It's a sad day for the family, for Alex's wife Moira and the wider family. But I think they will be relieved that Alex has returned home to Scotland, to Aberdeenshire, and he has been reunited with his loved ones and is back in Scotland, the country that he led, among the people that he loved.
Outside the airport, the Yes bikers gathered to provide an escort to the cortege.
Alex Salmond, he was an absolute stalwart, just a true patriot of Scotland.
I've loved Alec all my political life, all my adult life. He's been such an inspiration to me personally and to everybody in Scotland. It's the right thing to do, and we were honoured to be here.
For what he did for independence, you know, I mean, a massive movement was put back out the streets of Scotland again, and you know, it's just like it's sad day.
Members of the public turned out too.
It would be a crying shame not to come out and thank him and honour him for his belief in Scots, his belief in Scotland.
Scotland, always close to Alex Salmond's heart. The saltire was draped over the coffin in the hearse, as plans are finalised for him to be laid to rest in the country he championed in life. Andrew Kerr, Reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
Let's speak now to our political editor, Glenn Campbell. Glenn, a sad homecoming for Alex Salmond this afternoon. How would you sum up the day?
Well, we all know Alex Salmond as a great champion of Scottish independence, and we know that he and those on the yes side fell short in the referendum 10 years ago in September. But I think there were moments today, Sally, where it felt almost like a state occasion, the saltire being draped over his coffin, and particularly in North Macedonia, the red carpet being rolled out and North Macedonian soldiers providing an honour guard. Perhaps things were a little less elevated when he arrived back in Scotland because it was principally a family occasion. This wasn't the repatriation of a prince, a president, a prime minister. Alex Salmond died as a private citizen, and he didn't live to see his goal of Scottish statehood. If the independence question comes back to the fore again in the future, and that is an if, then that will be part of his legacy. But I think the other thing that today underlined was that his voice will be absent from that debate, and it will be for others in the independence movement now to carry that torch.
Glenn Campbell, thank you very much. Work colleagues of Jade McEnroe, the 33-year-old mother who died in a crash on the M6 on Tuesday, have been paying tribute to her. The team at the Gin Spa in Glasgow say Jade was not only a co-worker but a friend who brightened every day with the warmest smile, and a devoted mother. They also sent hope and love to her son, who remains in hospital. 42-year-old Jaroslav Rosa also died in the crash alongside two boys aged 15 and 7. Inverness Caledonian Thistle Football Club have said this evening that they're now in the process of entering into administration. The club had been in negotiations with potential backers, but no deal was reached. Our reporter Richard Forbes joined me now. Richard, what more can you tell us?
Well, Sally, things were looking a bit hopeful earlier this week with talk of David Anderson, a businessman from Cullen, looking to put more than £1 million into the club. However, he met with the board yesterday and they tried to thrash out a deal, but he concluded that it wasn't the right time for him to invest. The board met again this afternoon, and just as we were setting up the cameras a few minutes ago, the interim chair, Scott Young, came over and gave me this bit of paper. And it says, the directors have signed a notice of intention to appoint administrators. We envisage that the administrators will be appointed on Monday or Tuesday. A plan is in place to allow the club to continue to trade while efforts to secure a long-term future are explored. Now, from a league point of view, administration triggers a 15-point deduction, and that will potentially lead to relegation for Inverness Cally Thistle. And all this can only be a distraction to the players when they face Annan Athletic tomorrow afternoon.
Richard Forbes, thank you very much. A teenage boy has admitted killing a bus driver by headbutting and raining punches on him, the High Court in Edinburgh has heard. 58-year-old Keith Rollinson died of a cardiac arrest after the incident at the Elgin bus station in February. His wife and daughters were in the public gallery as the 16-year-old, who was 15 at the time, pleaded guilty to culpable homicide. Stephen Godden reports.
When he died, Keith Rollinson's family said they were shattered by his loss. After an RAF career, the 58-year-old began driving buses for Stagecoach. He was on shift in February when his attacker tried to board his bus at Elgin bus station. The 15-year-old was drunk and Keith Rollinson wouldn't let him on.
The court heard the 15-year-old was agitated and upset at not being allowed to board the bus. CCTV footage was shown of the physical struggle that followed. The boy was described as having completely lost control, headbutting Mr. Rollinson and raining punches on his head and body before being pulled away by another youth. A medical examination that followed found that the boy had broken a bone in his hand during the assault.
Shortly after the assault, Mr. Rollinson collapsed on the bus station concourse and never regained consciousness. He died in hospital, having suffered a cardiac arrest.
Now 16 years old, the teenager can't be identified because of his age. Following his guilty plea to a charge of culpable homicide, the narrative that was read out to the court revealed that he'd previously been reported to the police and given a supervision order for assaulting another bus driver.
A police statement said no one should face violence for simply doing their job, and that since February's incident they've been working to tackle youth disorder around Elgin bus station. Keith Rollinson's killer will be sentenced next month in Inverness. Stephen Gordon reporting Scotland at the High Court in Edinburgh.
The Chief Executive of the SNP is standing down. Former Daily Record editor Murray Foote took on the role just 14 months ago. Our political correspondent Phil Sim joins me now from outside SNP headquarters in Edinburgh. Phil, do we know why he's stepping down?
Well, he says the SNP is planning substantial reorganisation ahead of the Holyrood elections in 2026. That's perhaps not a surprise when you consider the damaging defeats that they had in the general election in July. But Murray Foote has not been in this job for long, and it means that a party that has had decades of stability at the top is now on its third leader in under 2 years and is seeking its third chief executive over the same period. For those outside the political bubble, Murray Foote is a former newspaper editor who went on to be an SNP spin doctor. He took over from Peter Murrell as the SNP's chief executive in August last year, but he's now decided that he cannot make the personal commitment to lead what he calls essential reforms of the SNP's backroom operation ahead of that Holyrood vote. So the party's national executive will meet next weekend to decide on the process, and we will see who throws their hat into the ring for what is still one of the biggest non-elected jobs in Scottish politics.
Phil Sim in Edinburgh, thank you very much. All primary schools in Perth and Kinross will be closed on Monday, and many could remain closed for the next fortnight. The council confirmed this afternoon how schools will be affected by a 2-week strike by some staff. The dispute is over pay for all council workers in Scotland, from librarians to bin workers. They're getting a rise of almost £1,300 or 3.6%, whichever is greater. Our news correspondent Jamie McIver reports.
The recent threat of another bin strike like this one led to a better pay offer for all council workers. 2 unions said yes, but the biggest council union, Unison, still wants more. So the action now turns to schools, and on Monday a 2-week strike starts in Perth and Kinross. It involves staff like janitors and support assistants.
Members are looking at the bigger picture, year on year. They're seeing pay increases that are below inflation. They're seeing pay increases that are below what are being offered to other sectors. They understand that over the last 10 years, it's over 25% reduction in local government funding. They feel undervalued, they feel underpaid, and they've quite simply had enough.
All primary schools and early learning and childcare in Perth and Kinross will close on Monday. Most secondaries will be open. After that, the council will keep the situation under review. Inevitably, some parents will face problems with childcare.
It's monetary concerns, not everybody can rely on aunties and uncles and grandparents, and, extra childcare costs, of course, also have an effect on your pocket. Parents are already struggling.
My son's in primary 7 now.
The strike follows straight on from the half-term holidays.
My own personal circumstances, I work part-time, but my husband works from home a lot of the time, so very lucky that James will be looked after. If they've got to take time off work, it can affect you financially as well. So it's a big thing, yeah.
I can understand why they're striking, but it is a bit kind of late in the day now to be waiting to know whether we're going to have 2 weeks of finding childcare or not.
Perth and Kinross Council doesn't have the power to resolve this dispute, as it's about council pay across Scotland. Unison says the one man who can resolve it is the First Minister John Swinney, who's also one of the local MSPs. Unison says this could be just the start, as it's planning a national strike ballot. Neither the First Minister nor council body COSLAB are doing interviews today, but both say there's no more money for pay and warn strikes are in nobody's interests. Jamie McIver, reporting Scotland.
It was seen as one of the biggest consumer interventions, hitting shoppers in the pocket to try and change old habits and protect the environment. 10 years ago this week, the charge on single-use carrier bags was introduced in Scotland. So, has it made a difference? Ben Phillip reports.
Mike has been picking up litter in Aberdeen for years. From old tyres to trolleys, he's seen it all. But one staple has always been plastic bags. But he thinks there's been an improvement in the last decade.
There has been a massive difference since we had that bag charge installed. It has reduced massively. Now, I'm aware that it's all going to be down to opinion, but for somebody that litter picks pretty much all the time, it has been massively reduced.
Please place your bags in the bagging area.
It was all change at the checkouts in 2014. Shops started charging a minimum of 5p per carrier bag. It's since risen to 10p. It was all in a bid to reduce waste, but not everyone was convinced.
I don't think I'll cut down and let her know.
I don't want to fork out all the time. Any extra than what I'm already paying.
10 years on, it appears attitudes have changed.
It encourages people to bring bags with them, which I don't think is too much trouble.
I don't mind it, but it has encouraged me to keep my bags after shopping, and I usually take my own bags with me.
To be honest, it's kind of just part and parcel now. When I do the big shop, just make sure that I take a shop bag with me.
Before the charge was introduced, shops in Scotland gave out an estimated 800 million single-use bags every year. That's the most per head of population in the UK. By 2015, it was estimated this was reduced by around 80%, but concerns remain about plastic litter.
Polling by charity Keep Scotland Beautiful suggests more than 70% of us still see plastic bag litter. There's been a notable decrease in bags being found on our beaches, but data from the Marine Conservation Society shows a recent spike. Many retailers agreed to donate money from the bag charge to good causes.
I think it's really important that we continue to think about where the money has gone and to celebrate it, because I'm sure there's fantastic work going on across the country supported by that money.
The next consumer intervention could be the so-called Latte Levy. The Scottish Government is consulting on a charge for single-use cups by the end of next year. But for now, when picking up the messages, it's hoped we remember our bags to reduce the risk of plastic litter being picked up by people like Mike. Ben Phillip, reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
You cut down your usage?
I have a little bit, so
Yeah.
I have to admit, yeah, I'm on the paper bags now, and yeah, try to reuse them as much as I can.
Yeah, good for you. What you got for us then?
Yeah, a big day in football coming up tomorrow in the Premiership, but there's also been some talk of pyrotechnics by the Celtic Rangers managers today, so that to come.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Sally. Yes, good evening. Well, we'll get to that shortly, but we have a tantalising top-of-the-table clash to look forward to in the Premiership this weekend as Celtic and Aberdeen meet in Glasgow, looking to protect their perfect starts to the season. Praise has been heaped on Don's manager Jimmy Tilleen, who is on an impressive run of 13 wins. But given Aberdeen haven't beaten Celtic in their last 25 meetings, the Swede is under no illusion as to how tough a test it will be.
It's way too early. I think Stivia plays 7 games. It's the 8th game tomorrow, and it's October, and then you have until May, and a lot of things can happen. So nothing has changed in our how we think about everything. We have a long-term project, and this season we go game by game and try to be better. We try to create a clear identity. So as usual, game by game, stay humble, respect the opponent, their strength and weakness, and try to perform as we can do as an Aberdeen.
Well, the clash between the two this weekend is hotly anticipated for good reason. The obvious one is this: 7 games in, 100% records, joint top of the table. However, the last 3 times that Aberdeen have gone to Celtic Park, they've lost 6-0, 5-0 and 4-0. And one former player of both sides says he wouldn't be surprised if Celtic have another routine afternoon tomorrow.
I expect comfortable victory for Celtic, to be honest, by a couple of goals. I think that Aberdeen coming there with a bit more expectation will play into Celtic's hands, because they'll then need to kind of step up a level mentally, knowing that Aberdeen are coming thinking they can get something. And I think that might suit Celtic, because they might actually leave some gaps for Celtic to exploit instead of maybe just sitting on the edge of their box like a lot of teams do at Celtic Park.
Well, earlier we got the thoughts of some Aberdeen fans to see how they're feeling ahead of the trip to Celtic Park.
Yeah, I think we've got a good chance. 13 wins out of 13 so far, so just give it a go and see how we do.
I've been an Aberdeen fan too many years to get too excited about the chances of winning at Celtic Park.
I haven't had the best record against them in the last couple of games, but I would like a draw, and a win would be even better.
Tomorrow, if we win, it's a big confidence booster, and if we lose, then hopefully we don't take it too hard.
Thoughts of Aberdeen fans there, and sticking with the subject of supporters, there was a strong message from the Celtic manager today, who claimed that only fans who do not care about the club would unleash pyrotechnics at next week's Champions League game against Atalanta. It comes after UEFA fined the club for the lighting of fireworks during their defeat away to Borussia Dortmund. The club also face a 1-match ban on away fans at a UEFA club match if there is another incident in the next 2 years. Meanwhile, across the city, Philippe Clement addressed the topic too after Rangers were also fined for similar incidents, prompting a statement from their chairman asking for the pyro to stop and warning that the repercussions could be larger should it continue.
Everything where the club gets fines for, it's a bad thing for the club, for everybody working in the club, but for the fans also. So it lowers the budget for other things, where for the fans also really important. So they need to be smart and follow the rules that are made by the UEFA, by the Scottish Football League. So they need to follow that, like you need to follow also the rules when you're outside in the city, and you need to follow the rules of the police. That's life.
Hearts' new head coach Neil Critchley says he is comfortable with the expectations that come with the job as he prepares to take to the Tynecastle dugout for the first time tomorrow. Hearts welcome St Mirren, still looking for their first win of the season, currently sitting bottom of the league with 2 points from 8 games. Well, despite their poor position, Critchley is relishing the challenge.
This is the biggest football club I've been at, without a shadow of a doubt. Managing, coaching, you feel it. But what I have felt, I say, is genuine compassion towards me and people really wanting you to do well because it means the club does well. I've had a fantastic week. I've really enjoyed it, and I just hope it's capped off tomorrow with a performance and 3 points.
Now, we're going to talk about photo booths.
Oh no!
Have a look at these. You're too young to even remember these.
Well, I've been in a photo booth, don't you worry. I'm not as young as I look.
Yeah, well, this is about the fact that these days we are kind of used to passport photos in the kind of digital photo booths that you find in supermarkets, but they weren't always like that. And a Scottish gallery has installed one of the last remaining analogue photo booths in the hope of preserving a little bit of history. It's awful to think your history. Our arts correspondent Pauline McLean reports.
It's a new type of photographic studio where you can register those manly expressions you so often practice in secret, where you can stare like a He-Man with no operator to put you off your stroke.
The photo booth was invented in New York in the 1920s and quickly found fans around the world.
The person who created it made millions of pounds just kind of very in the beginning. And then it went on to be this kind of standard form of identification for passports. But then at the same time, you had surrealists, you had Andy Warhol, you had all of these amazing artists using it for their practice. And then you also had the general public who were really experiencing the ability to get their picture taken without a photographer for the first time.
And it's that fun factor which may have saved this vintage model from the scrap heap. Shipped over from New Jersey, it's both a cultural keepsake and a fundraiser for the gallery.
We think that there's roughly about 200 working photo booths in the entire world. So the photo booth community has been incredible, and they've been really inviting and allowing us to secure a photo booth. But yeah, I mean, around the time that these analog photo booths started to kind of become obsolete, a lot of them got thrown in skips. Like, people didn't think that they would come back, and they have.
The analogue photo booth isn't without its challenges, as those who used them first time around will recall. But at least this time you can take a peek at what's going on inside as your photos are developed.
The gallery hope that this will bring new audiences to, and old audiences back, to the retro photo booth, which despite the challenges, they say, is still worth the wait. Pauline McLean, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Oh, lovely piece. Let's see what the weather's up to now with Gillian.
Hi, Sally. Some stormy weather to come on Sunday, but there'll be sunshine on offer tomorrow. And before we get there, some heavy rain tonight. So a bit of everything in this forecast. Good evening to you. It will be a weekend of two halves. Tomorrow's looking pretty settled. Lots of dry weather, some sunshine, just a scattering of showers. But then into Sunday, it's turning stormy. Our first named storm of the season, Ashley, swinging in, bringing severe gales, heavy rain, risk of coastal flooding, and we have amber and yellow warnings in place from the Met Office. I'll come back to Ashley in a second, because for the here and now we have this weather front in play, a fairly active cold front working its way eastwards across the country, bringing some pulses of quite heavy rain and blustery winds for a time. It is quite a fast moving feature, so through the early hours that pulls away into the North Sea. Behind that, dry conditions, some clear spells, just a scattering of showers following into the northwest, and winds will ease down for many, but they will remain brisk in parts of the north and west. So tomorrow looking like by far the better day of the weekend. Lots of dry and bright weather, some good spells of sunshine, a scattering of showers mainly affecting the northwest Highlands and Argyll. Relatively few, if any, showers tomorrow for the Northern Isles. There'll be some good spells of sunshine, winds lighter than today, temperatures around 13 Celsius. And generally for many eastern, southern parts, the central belt as well, showers will be few and far between. There'll be some good spells of sunshine. Temperatures a notch down on today, but not bad, 13 or 14 Celsius, and winds for the most part lighter. Still quite brisk winds along the west coast, and those showers most frequent over the northwest Highlands and Argyll, where a few will be on the heavy side. But into tomorrow evening, showers tend to fade, leaving us largely dry with clear spells. The calm before the storm, because through the early hours those winds starting to ramp up along the west coast as Storm Ashley swings in off the Atlantic. This rapidly deepening area of low pressure that has prompted an amber warning of high winds for parts of western Scotland through the day on Sunday. Gusts 70 to 80 miles an hour, so potentially damaging gusts, coupled with high tides, could lead to coastal flooding and a risk of travel disruption. And we also have a lower tier yellow warning, this one countrywide for high winds, gusts widely 50 to 60, potentially 70 miles an hour in exposure, all coupled with very heavy rain. A wet start to Sunday. That clears to squally showers, and I think it's Sunday evening and the first part of Sunday night that we'll see the peak of those winds in the west and northwest. Still very windy in the north to start on Monday, the winds gradually easing, showers in the west, best of the brightness in the east. That's the forecast. Sally.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Gillian. And that is Reporting Scotland. Anne McAlpine will be here with your late news at around 10:30 tonight. But until then, from everyone on the team, do enjoy your evening and keep safe from these weekend winds. Bye from us.